Beneath the murky waters of the Devonian period, a giant predator ruled the rivers and shallow seas. Jaekelopterus was no ordinary scorpion. It was an 8-foot-long nightmare armed with razor-sharp pincers and lightning-fast reflexes. Unlike its smaller modern relatives, this sea scorpion wasn't scuttling around in the dirt. It was a dominant hunter, using its enormous claws to snatch up fish and crush them in a merciless grip. Its large, complex eyes allowed it to spot prey from a distance, and once it locked onto a target, there was no escape. It would lunge forward, claws snapping shut with bone-crushing force, dragging its victim into the depths. Some scientists believe it may have even hunted early armored fish, breaking through their tough exteriors with its brutal pincers. Jaekelopterus was built for speed, stealth, and destruction. If you think modern scorpions are unsettling, this one would have dwarfed a full-grown man. Its massive body, spiny limbs, and eerie silent movements through the water made it a true monster of the ancient world. In the Cretaceous period, among towering giants and ferocious predators, there was something even stranger, something that looked like it shouldn't exist. Therizinosaurus was a mystery wrapped in feathers, bulk, and some of the longest claws ever seen on an animal. These claws, stretching over 3 feet long, were the size of swords. At first glance, they looked like the weapons of a brutal killer. But Therizinosaurus wasn't after flesh, it was a plant eater. That didn't make it any less dangerous. If cornered, this 33-foot-long, multi-ton giant had the tools to slash through flesh and bone in a single swing. No predator would risk an easy meal if it meant getting ripped open by claws sharper than any raptor's. Its long, curved talons could gut anything that came too close, and no one knows exactly how aggressive it was. With a powerful beak and massive muscular arms, Therizinosaurus was built for destruction, even if it didn't go looking for a fight. But if predators feared Therizinosaurus on land, the ocean had something even worse waiting in its depths. Some creatures were too big to run from, too fast to escape, and too powerful to fight back against. One of them was the ultimate sea monster, Megalodon. If the modern great white shark is terrifying, Megalodon was something else entirely. It wasn't just bigger, it completely reshaped the balance of life in the ocean. This monster shark could grow over 60 feet long, with teeth the size of a human hand, serrated like saw blades to slice through flesh and crush bone. Its jaws could open wide enough to swallow a person whole without even trying. Unlike sharks today, Megalodon didn't have to rely on surprise attacks. It was too big, too strong, and nothing else in the water could challenge it. It hunted whales, biting through their thick bones with a force of over 40,000 pounds per square inch. When it struck, the victim didn't stand a chance. There was no escape, just one devastating bite and a cloud of blood in the water. For millions of years, Megalodon ruled the oceans completely uncontested. But even in prehistoric times, there were creatures so strange, so alien, they seemed more like something from another world. And some of them weren't in the water at all. They crawled across the land, armored, legged, and unstoppable. The Carboniferous forests hid their own horrors, and one of them was a crawling titan of nightmares. Long before dinosaurs roamed the earth, the Carboniferous period was ruled by giants that didn't need fangs, claws, or venom to be terrifying. One of them was Arthropleura, a millipede the size of a car, stretching over 8 feet long and crawling through the dense prehistoric forests. Its segmented, armored body clicked and rattled as it moved, a sound that would have echoed through the undergrowth, sending smaller creatures scurrying for safety. Unlike its modern relatives, which feed on rotting leaves, there's still debate over what Arthropleura actually ate. Some scientists believe it was a harmless plant eater, while others suggest it may have been opportunistic, devouring smaller animals if it got the chance. What is certain is that nothing dared to attack it. Its sheer size, weight, and tough exoskeleton made it nearly impossible to kill. Even if something had been brave enough to try, Arthropleura could rear up like a massive armored serpent, towering over anything that got too close. The forests where it lived were humid, oxygen-rich, and crawling with insects far larger than anything today. Dragonflies with 2-foot wingspans, foot-long scorpions, and Arthropleura lurking like a moving fortress of armor and muscle. But for all its size, this titan had no claws or venom. It relied on its body alone to survive. Other ancient creatures, however, took a different approach. Instead of armor, some evolved into silent killers, capable of swallowing their prey whole. And none did it better than the largest snake to ever exist, Titanoboa. After the dinosaurs disappeared, the world didn't become safer. The swamps and jungles of prehistoric South America became home to something even more terrifying. A snake so large and so powerful that it ruled the waterways without challenge. Titanoboa was the largest snake to ever slither across the earth, stretching over 50 feet long and weighing more than a ton. This was no ordinary constrictor. It hunted like an anaconda, but on a scale never seen before. Modern snakes kill by wrapping around their prey and squeezing, but Titanoboa took it to an entirely new level. Its muscular coils could exert pressure strong enough to crush bones instantly, and its victims, ancient crocodiles and giant fish, didn't stand a chance. It could lurk in the water, completely invisible beneath the surface, striking with explosive speed and dragging prey into the depths before wrapping its massive body around them. With its crushing grip, it could kill in seconds, swallowing creatures whole once they stopped struggling. For millions of years, Titanoboa was the undisputed king of the rivers, its massive body gliding through the swamps where nothing could challenge it. But as time passed and the climate changed, this monster faded into history. Yet its fossils remain, a chilling reminder of a time when the most dangerous predator on the planet wasn't a dinosaur, but a snake so large that even today, it seems impossible. Long before the age of giants, before anything even crawled on land, Earth's oceans were filled with alien-like creatures, unlike anything that exists today. Among them was Hallucigenia, an 8-legged, spiny-backed, two-bodied enigma that looked more like a glitch in evolution than a real animal. At just a few inches long, it wasn't a massive predator, but what it lacked in size, it made up for in pure, unsettling strangeness. For years, scientists couldn't even figure out which way it faced. Fossil discoveries flipped the creature's orientation multiple times, with researchers mistaking its long spines for legs and its legs for antennae. But one thing has always been certain: this was no ordinary worm. Its thin, tube-like body wriggled through Cambrian seas, balancing on multiple stilt-like legs, while rows of jagged spines lined its back like natural barbed wire. These spines, sharp and unforgiving, likely made it unappetizing to even the most determined predators. Despite its fragile appearance, Hallucigenia thrived in a time when prehistoric oceans were filled with creatures that looked straight out of a nightmare. Giant arthropods, razor-toothed fish, and armored sea monsters ruled the water, but this strange, spiny creature endured. It may not have been a hunter, but its nightmarish form ensured it wouldn't be easy prey. Of course, while Hallucigenia may have looked bizarre, it was harmless. Some creatures weren't so lucky. In the age of dinosaurs, another monster lurked beneath the water's surface, one that could end even a T-Rex with a single bite. Today's crocodiles are living fossils, nearly unchanged for millions of years. But in the time of the dinosaurs, there was one that dwarfed them all. Dinosuchus was 33 feet long, weighed as much as an elephant, and had a bite force more powerful than T-Rex. It was an ambush predator of terrifying proportions, lurking beneath the surface of ancient rivers and exploding from the water with devastating speed. Modern crocodiles can take down large animals, but Dinosuchus had far bigger prey in mind. Fossil evidence suggests that it hunted dinosaurs. Some dinosaur bones have been found with deep, crushing bite marks, the kind only a giant set of reptilian jaws could make. When a thirsty herbivore wandered too close to the water's edge, Dinosuchus could launch itself upward, snapping its massive jaws around its victim's leg or neck and dragging it beneath the surface. Once locked in its grip, there was no escape. Unlike today's crocodiles, which mostly lurk in swamps and rivers, Dinosuchus likely patrolled coastal waters, ambushing marine reptiles and even sharks. It was an apex predator, feared by everything that shared its territory. Even the largest dinosaurs had to be cautious when stepping near the water, and once it struck, all that remained was a ripple on the surface and a cloud of blood beneath the waves. The prehistoric seas were filled with monsters, but few could match the raw power of Jaekelopterus. This marine reptile was one of the deadliest hunters of the Jurassic, a 50-foot-long predator with a bite force strong enough to crush bone in an instant. Unlike other massive sea creatures, it wasn't a slow-moving giant. It had powerful paddle-like flippers, allowing it to accelerate like a torpedo before striking. With razor-sharp teeth over 3 inches long, Jaekelopterus's jaws were built for slicing through flesh with precision. Its skull alone stretched over 10 feet, giving it one of the strongest bites of its time. Unlike sharks, which have loose, flexible jaws, Liopleurodon's skull was reinforced for sheer crushing power. It could take down anything that crossed its path, from large fish to other marine reptiles. Adding to its advantage was its incredible sense of smell. Fossils suggest it had an elongated snout filled with sensory pits, allowing it to detect prey from miles away, even in murky water. Once it locked onto a target, there was no escape. The Jurassic seas were home to some terrifying creatures, but Liopleurodon was the king of them all. But just as it dominated its time, other oceans held their own horrors, some of them with jaws unlike anything seen before. Sharks have always been among Earth's most efficient predators, but Helicoprion was something else entirely. This bizarre creature, swimming through the seas 290 million years ago, had a jaw that defied all logic, a spiral of razor-sharp teeth curled into a circular saw. For decades, scientists couldn't even figure out how its jaw worked. Fossilized tooth whorls showed rows of serrated rotating teeth, but there was no clear indication of how they were positioned in the mouth. Modern reconstruction suggests that Helicoprion's lower jaw functioned like a natural buzzsaw, rolling forward as it bit down, slicing through prey like a living meat grinder. Instead of losing old teeth, it simply pushed them forward, making its bite stronger with age. Reaching lengths of 20 to 25 feet, Helicoprion wasn't the biggest predator in the ocean, but its unique adaptation made it an efficient killer. It likely fed on soft-bodied prey, slicing through squid and fish with terrifying efficiency. The ancient seas were home to many strange creatures, but none had a hunting method quite like Helicoprion. While it dominated the water, other bizarre predators roamed the land, some of them towering over the landscape in ways no one would expect. Camels are often associated with vast deserts and peaceful grazing, but their prehistoric relatives were something entirely different. Titanoboa, a massive 12-foot-tall camel, wasn't just built for survival, it was built for dominance. Unlike today's camels, which are lanky and slender, Titanoboa was a muscular giant, its powerful legs capable of covering vast distances with ease. But what made it so terrifying was its potential diet. Most fossil evidence suggests that Titanoboa was an herbivore, using its large sturdy teeth to graze on vegetation. But some scientists believe it may have been an opportunistic feeder, capable of scavenging or even hunting if the need arose. With its sheer size and strong, crushing bite, it could have easily overpowered smaller creatures, snapping bones and tearing into meat when plant-based food was scarce. If this theory holds true, Titanoboa wouldn't just have been a giant roaming the Ice Age plains, it would have been a nomadic predator, using its height and endurance to track down weakened prey. Whether it was purely an herbivore or something more, one thing is certain, this was no ordinary camel. In an era where survival meant adaptation, Titanoboa stood as one of the largest and most mysterious creatures to roam the land. The skies of the late Cretaceous weren't safe. High above the prehistoric landscape, a shadow would stretch across the land, and for anything small enough to be carried away, that shadow meant certain death. Quetzalcoatlus, named after the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, was one of the largest flying animals to ever exist. With a wingspan of over 36 feet, it was the size of a small plane, soaring across ancient skies like a living nightmare. Unlike modern birds, it wasn't fragile or light. Quetzalcoatlus had a massive, reinforced skull with a sharp, pointed beak, built to snatch up prey in an instant. Some scientists believe it hunted like a giant airborne stork, stalking smaller dinosaurs on land and using its powerful jaws to grab and kill with a single motion. Others argue that it was a scavenger, feasting on the remains of dead dinosaurs too large for other predators to consume. Either way, Quetzalcoatlus was a terrifying presence, capable of traveling vast distances without landing, covering prehistoric landscapes like a flying fortress. When it wasn't in the air, it would have been just as imposing on the ground. Standing nearly as tall as a giraffe, Quetzalcoatlus could have patrolled floodplains on foot, towering over other creatures as it searched for food. Whether in the sky or on land, it was a predator unlike any other. But while the skies had their monsters, the rivers and swamps of prehistoric Earth held something even deadlier. A creature that could pull entire dinosaurs beneath the surface without a sound. Modern crocodiles are dangerous, but Sarcosuchus was on another level. This 40-foot-long titan was twice the size of the largest crocodiles today, with a skull over 5 feet long and a bite powerful enough to crush bones in an instant. Unlike its modern relatives, which mostly stick to small prey, Sarcosuchus hunted dinosaurs. Fossils suggest that it lurked in prehistoric rivers, waiting for unsuspecting herbivores to stop for a drink. The moment one got too close, Sarcosuchus would strike with explosive force, clamping its massive jaws around its victim's legs or neck and dragging it beneath the surface. Some scientists believe its bite wasn't just strong, it was designed to hold on, preventing anything from escaping. Once in its grip, there was no fighting back. Its thick, armor-plated body made it nearly indestructible, allowing it to dominate prehistoric swamps and rivers for millions of years. Unlike today's crocodiles, which mostly feed on fish and small mammals, Sarcosuchus was large enough to challenge almost anything. And while its reign eventually came to an end, it remains one of the largest and most fearsome reptiles to ever live. But prehistoric waters weren't the only place where terrifying creatures lurked. The ancient land had its own horrors, ones that crawled in the shadows, waiting to strike with venom and claws. Before dinosaurs, before even the first reptiles, the Carboniferous period was ruled by giant arthropods, and one of the most fearsome was Pulmonoscorpius, a scorpion over 2 feet long. This was no tiny desert creature, it was a massive, armored predator with powerful pincers and a venomous sting, capable of killing anything small enough to be considered prey. Unlike today's scorpions, which mostly stay hidden, Pulmonoscorpius was one of the largest land-dwelling arachnids in history. With its long, segmented body and thick, crushing claws, it could snatch up insects, amphibians, and even small vertebrates. Scientists believe its venom may have been powerful enough to paralyze prey instantly, making escape impossible. The forests of the Carboniferous were humid, dark, and filled with creatures far larger than their modern relatives. With oxygen levels much higher than today, insects and arachnids grew to terrifying sizes, turning the ancient world into a realm of giants. And in that world, Pulmonoscorpius was a silent, creeping terror, lurking beneath the foliage, waiting for its next victim. The Carboniferous period created some of the strangest and most unsettling creatures in history, but the fear they brought didn't die with them. Millions of years later, Earth would see new apex predators, ones even more terrifying and unstoppable. And for the creatures that found themselves hunted by them, there was only one rule: run before it's too late. Before the dinosaurs, there was a time when mammal-like reptiles ruled the land, and at the top of that food chain was Gorgonops. This creature was a blend of reptile and proto-mammal, a terrifying evolutionary experiment that resulted in one of the deadliest predators of the Permian period. With massive saber-like fangs, a powerful muscular body, and a bite strong enough to crush bone, Gorgonops was the apex predator of its time. Growing up to 10 feet long, this predator didn't hunt small prey, it took down massive herbivores with brute force. Unlike modern reptiles, Gorgonops had mammal-like jaws, allowing it to open its mouth incredibly wide, far wider than today's big cats. Its saber-like teeth weren't just for show. They were designed to puncture thick hides, piercing deep into the flesh of its victims. When it clamped down, there was no shaking it off. This was a world before dinosaurs, and yet the level of brutality was just as intense. Gorgonops hunted in a landscape filled with early reptiles and mammal-like creatures, taking down anything that dared cross its path. It was one of the first predators to hunt with intelligence, using its keen eyesight and speed to ambush its prey. Today's sperm whales dive deep and hunt squid, but millions of years ago their ancestor had a very different diet: other whales and giant sharks. Leviathan was a 56-foot-long monster with teeth over a foot long, the largest biting teeth of any known animal. It was a true apex predator, built not for scavenging or defense but for all-out assault on anything that shared its waters. Unlike Megalodon, which used sheer size and crushing force to kill its prey, Leviathan's attack style was far more aggressive and calculated. It had a massive head filled with bone-crushing teeth, and it likely hunted with the intelligence of modern whales, working in groups to ambush and kill prey. Its jaws could snap bones in a single bite, tearing through the blubber and muscle of even the largest marine creatures. The battles between Leviathan and Megalodon must have been some of the most intense clashes in prehistoric history. While Megalodon ruled with brute force, Leviathan brought strategy, intelligence, and sheer aggression into the fight. It was a super predator in every sense, and as Megalodon's numbers began to decline, it was creatures like Leviathan that likely helped drive them to extinction. When it comes to pure, relentless carnage, few creatures in history come close to Jaekelopterus, a 30-foot-long armored fish with a bite force rivaling the deadliest predators to ever live. This terrifying giant wasn't a shark, wasn't a dinosaur, and wasn't a reptile. It was a placoderm, an ancient lineage of fish that evolved thick, bony armor instead of scales. Instead of teeth, Jaekelopterus had razor-sharp bony plates that acted as a built-in shearing guillotine. Unlike modern sharks, which use serrated teeth to rip flesh apart, Jaekelopterus simply bit down and severed its prey in half. Its bite was as fast as a bullet, snapping shut in 1/50th of a second, meaning nothing could escape once it lunged. It would have been like a living submarine with a mouthful of shearing blades, cruising through the Devonian seas with nothing able to challenge it. But Jaekelopterus had another terrifying trait. It was likely a cannibal. Fossils suggest that when food was scarce, these armored fish turned on each other, with deep bite marks found on the skulls of their own kind. This was a world of unrelenting survival, and even the biggest predators were not safe from one another. Millions of years later, another terrifying sea creature would take the oceans by storm, one that looked like a serpent from legend, but was entirely real. Whales today are massive but peaceful, feeding on krill and plankton. Their ancestor, however, was nothing short of a prehistoric nightmare. Basilosaurus was a 60-foot-long sea monster with jaws packed with razor-sharp teeth, and unlike modern whales, it was a ruthless carnivore. Its elongated, snake-like body gave it a serpentine appearance, making it one of the strangest marine predators to ever exist. While its modern relatives dived deep into the ocean, Basilosaurus hunted in shallow waters, where it could ambush smaller whales, sharks, and massive fish with ease. It wasn't a filter feeder. It didn't migrate in pods. It was a solitary, brutal hunter, its long, flexible body allowing it to twist and strike at prey with incredible speed. Unlike today's whales, Basilosaurus had useless, tiny back legs, leftovers from when its ancestors still walked on land. But it had no need for legs anymore. In the water, it was one of the deadliest predators of its time. It used its long jaws to clamp down on prey and shake it apart, a hunting style similar to modern crocodiles. For millions of years, Basilosaurus ruled the oceans, until climate changes and new predators took its place. But in its prime, it was a true ocean terror, a giant sea serpent of flesh and bone, moving through the Eocene seas like an unstoppable force. That's about it. Write in the comments which prehistoric animal scared you the most. For more useful information, watch other videos.